There was a dog I trained a number of years ago that was deathly afraid of parked cars. The first car I approached with the dog, it reared up and it fought for its life. It was screaming and pulling. It was like a horse just going crazy. Now, a lot of people might think, well, you've got to cover the car in biscuits and lead a trail of biscuits up to the car, get the dog used to that and accustomed to it. Maybe with 6 months of intense biscuit eating that you may eventually get the dog comfortable with that car. But then you've got to deal with the next car. Now what I did was I had my training collar on the dog, which at that time was a pinch collar, and I put a muzzle on the dog so that the dog now had no ability to use its teeth to resist the situation. And I held the dog tightly in beside me and I marched it up to the car and I held it between me and the car for about 20 minutes as I went around until the dog relaxed, and then it would walk calmly around that car. Now, I went to the second car and the dog's initial reaction was exactly the same as the first, where it would rear up and try to fight. Now, its fight was restricted because of the muzzle, and it was now being corrected for pulling on the line. We'd also done a couple days of work with the dog as far as down commands and so forth first. I went to the second car. I again took the dog in tightly behind the neck here, held it up as between me and the car when I went around the car, and this time it was 10 minutes, so it was half the amount of time of the first car, and the dog was calm again. Now at this point, I went to the third car, and there was no negative reaction from the dog whatsoever. So it took me a half an hour, forcing the dog to walk around 2 cars, and the dog was completely cured. And the owner called me later that evening when she went for a walk with her husband, and she was ecstatic. The fact that without a muzzle on, the dog walked by every single parked car without any negative response to it whatsoever. The dog was cured. So we took the dog right into the deep end, into its most intense fear, and we said, we rule over your mind. And if you have any issues, it lays on our shoulders as the leaders. So the dog was able to relax. Even though it was a half an hour of intense fear from the dog, at the end of that, the dog was able to live a very peaceful life because there's parked cars everywhere. And it was wonderful to see the dog freed from that strange mental behavior. We don't know why it happened, and it doesn't really matter why it happened. The fact was that we looked at what was the response of the dog to its general surroundings, and we showed the dog that those fears are not warranted. So most fears that dogs have about the common noises, vacuums, shopping carts, bicycles, skateboards, all those types of things can be solved very quickly once you've laid your foundation of respect for you. So it doesn't matter what the situation. You could have the strangest noise in the strangest place. Go, take your dog to it, and stay there until the dog gets used to it. You may have to go back 2 or 3 or 4 days in a row for an hour at a time. I've gone and sat in the middle of heavy traffic where dogs are afraid of cars. I'll sit on the meridian that stretches between the 2 lanes of traffic where it's safe to do so, and just stay with the dog until the dog realizes that the traffic is not going to cause any problems. Even though the dog may seem incredibly uncomfortable as you approach these sounds that it's afraid of, when you persist and put your emotions aside, don't feel sorry for the dog, but look to the future and say very quickly the dog will be comfortable and happy in those situations. Your dog will have a life free of stress relating to those things. So just don't get caught up in the dog's anxiety during the moment, because if you don't do the work, you won't get the result.